Hello and welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster. We are working finally on our first coaster build, at least the station of it, this time around. We are working on the temple that is going to sit up on top of this base structure here. And it's a little bit of like a Parthenon, I believe, is what those are called. These solid blocks that hold temples like this. And it's generally a Greek thing. But we're going to be using a lot of copy and paste like last time. And what I'm doing here is essentially getting a good angle set for the main kind of structure piece that's going to be surrounding this upper area. And then also making a blank version so that we don't have all these vertical elements every time. It's just going to be in every other pattern, which is great. It always kind of looks good to space things out like that. It's not as visually busy. So I'm going to go ahead and explain how the copy and paste works in Planet Coaster. I think some people are still a little confused as to how it actually functions. When you're actually clicked on a building, editing it, you can left click each piece. If you hold control, you can left click and select multiples. And then also you have the option to drag a box around things you want to actually select. At that point, you can hit Control and D, and that's going to be the shortcut for copy and paste. And then you can place it around anywhere on the grid. It's going to copy it based on the grid, and so therefore you need to make sure each segment is lined up as perfect as it can for grid kind of spacing. Also, I didn't know about the selection box, and so you guys actually told me about that last episode, so I'm going to go ahead and thank you for that, because it helped me fix my problem from last time on these structures that were stuck inside of an object that I couldn't get to, and it was just a hassle. So thanks for that, that's fixed, and we are going from there. So our raised up section is pretty much done. It was relatively quick, it's just a lot of copy and paste. There's going to be a decent amount of copy and paste in this to speed it up. And then I'm going to be adding these extra vertical pillar elements here, which will eventually hold some type of, a brazier, some type of fire element on there, just for some dramatic effect, some extra lighting as well. And using molding around a base pillar can also make a base pillar look very wide, so it's a very wide pillar at this point. And if you guys want to do that into your own builds, I would suggest doing so. It would be good for making like giant order structures, so things that are like 3 stories or higher, you could say. And yeah, I'm liking the overall scale of this thing. You know, when we pull away, and you guys can hopefully see eventually just how much space this takes up. And also in the background, you'll notice a mountain, and that's going to be next episode. It's actually going to be our awesome roller coaster as soon as I get around to laying out the track and everything. Today, it's just going to be the station and the surrounding little areas kind of to the left and right. I'm going to be using kind of this double pillar design here, which I think turned out really cool. You know, from a distance, it not only looks like it can actually support the heavy roof, because Roman roofing was actually very heavy, which is why they used so many of these columns to hold up that gigantic amount of weight. That doubling it up looks pretty cool, and also it is accurate. They did do this occasionally. If they didn't want to do a solid large pillar, they would put a couple side by side. So our coaster's there. You're going to notice the entrance and exit is actually going to go under the structure itself. And so you're not going to be able to see where the coaster comes in to the station or exits the station unless you're on like the backside or something. And what that's going to do is hopefully keep the front end very nice and clean. I don't have to worry about this random piece of track kind of sticking out and kind of ruining the overall look of the entire building. And then especially since this is such an eye-catching piece as you walk in, I definitely didn't want any exposed track out there. So you can see it takes up a really nice view range. And in the back is Mount Olympus, at least what will be Mount Olympus when we get there. A lot of white on this structure. I do try and add some elements of color and at least variation throughout. It's still up in the air whether or not that quite worked. Another problem was I used these large marble slabs for a lot of the vertical elements here, and those actually have the attachments because it's supposed to be more of like a balcony element, and those attachments poke through on the lower sections because of the queue lines, how they run up through the structure. And so we'll fix that eventually by putting kind of pillars and additional elements around there to kind of hide them a little bit. They're still there. It's a little bit of a hassle to look at, but I think it's okay enough. Here is our first brazier, and it is just a simple wooden kind of circle here, and I threw in one of the fire elements plus a smoke because I didn't think it was giving off enough smoke. If it was an actual like wooden fire, I think giving off a little bit extra smoke kind of makes a little bit more sense. So because this is obviously a gas element. The roof, we're going to be using a lot of the roofing techniques from the bathhouse. So we're going to be using the back of this kind of copper bronze window. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, I do like the pattern on it, and it kind of looks like shingles if you kind of step back from it. But then also, it gives a nice color break. This thing is such a white and light structure that if I would, in my opinion, would have made the roof light, which, you know, maybe it could have been in historical times and everything, but I think visually having a dark roof with a white structure, just to break up that plane of vision so you can easily tell what's roof and what's not roof, I think it's great. So a lot of facades. We have sideways pillars on top of the main vertical pillars there to bulk up that wall thickness and to kind of, you know, give something for those pillars to attach to. And I think that turned out really well. Also throwing in a solid kind of upper roof section so that the top part looks like a solid single piece. Basic front facade here. Like many of the other structures in the, I guess this area of the park, we're going to use this kind of thin window, break up a piece of trim, and I really need to learn how to pause the game when I'm building. But I think sometimes I just get so like preoccupied with what I'm doing that I forget to pause the game, and so day-night cycle just keeps going and going, which doesn't look good for YouTube. And so I definitely need to fix that. Going to add these fake vertical elements here on top of the columns. And that's just to kind of carry their verticality up through the facade a little bit. And, you know, that turned out well. Copy and paste again, you know, definitely made this a lot quicker. You can even copy and paste one whole side and copy it over to the other side. If your grid is off though, when you're pasting from one side to the other, because you do flip the item around, it can create some problems. In fact, you'll probably see that here a bit later, that it doesn't line up perfectly. And so what I have to do is actually go back in and move things by hand a little bit. Even though the copy and paste was as close as I could get it, there are some times where it just sticks out. I didn't want any kind of plaster showing on the outside of the building at all, so we just covered that right up with some more elements. Added a sunken in door here just for some more verticality on spots, just to make it look like the whole structure was a little bit more load bearing, which is what it should be, really. You know, going through, selecting everything. If you misselect something, by the way, you can also just keep holding control, left click the same item, and it will deselect it. So I actually ended up copying it wrong and setting it to the wrong height, so I had to go back over and reselect it all again, and then kind of put it back into place. Using some molding just on top here to cover up a little bit more of that plaster and to make everything a little bit more smooth. Eventually on the back side where the queue lines actually start, I'll get rid of those doors, and that way the columns were actually just carried down to the floor at that point. I felt like having an arched doorway there ended up being a little weird. It didn't quite match. So some more frontal elements going on, and we'll be copying and pasting them over, adjusting them to try and make it fit the other side, because obviously I didn't pre-plan this as well as I should have, but I think it turned out okay for sure. I think this is actually probably my second favorite structure on the whole park right now. I think my favorite one is probably either the bathhouse or the arch. I'm not quite sure. There's kind of a tie for first place, but second place is definitely this. Just the overall scale, how it looks from ground level and everything. To me, it definitely just sells the park a little bit. Here, there's a little bit of a gap, and so using the side of the window frame, I can get a little bit more of this white stone element, and that allowed me to kind of fill in and hide the plaster. You can see, obviously, they weren't copied to the grid correctly, and so I had to move them over and slide them into place by hand. At this point, we're just going to copy the front facade, paste it onto the back, as they should be pretty much identical. There are some times where I can't select a piece to copy it, and it does create some problems, but they're workable. So you just go back in and you put some of the missing elements back that you ended up not being able to move over the rest. And yeah, I just love the overall scale of this structure. I think it actually ended up being very, very accurate, which I wasn't really kind of measuring it out in any way when I designed. That's not even a freaking word. When I just designed the whole upper area there, I was just like, yeah, I just need a rectangle, so we'll make it, I don't even know how long and wide that is off the top of my head. It's I just kind of measured it out, what looked close enough, and then it ended up being, in my opinion, very, very good looking. So I hope you guys kind of enjoyed that look. There will be some gardens on the left and right of the temple, and that stuff doesn't really get built on camera, as sometimes I need to probably focus more on building rather than worrying about trying to capture good camera angles, so that's why a lot of things get cut sometimes. Here is the main exit for the coaster, and we're just going to decorate that a little bit. Now the spot in the temple, because the center coaster area is actually where the temple would be, and where like the statue of whatever god with incense, yada yada. Obviously replace that stuff with a roller coaster, but it ended up being an asymmetrical building, and that's because the coaster entrance and exit is actually off center to the platform, which is a little bit of an annoyance from my perspective. It's not very easy to build around objects like that, especially when you're trying to fit it inside of like the center of another object. I mean, not even the coaster track entrance and exit lines up on a grid very well. In fact, I think it goes through like slightly off center to another grid, or at least the grid of the base of this. And so I think maybe next time when I'm building a coaster station, I should lay the coaster first and then base the whole structure off of it, because obviously the outer shell is a different building than the coaster station right now, and that kind of created some problems. So the inside of the temple, though, I did want some of this blue trim from the door just to bring in some type of I guess color into the plaster and trim, and I like that element. So the center of those kind of pillars, that ended up being some actual stone plaster, which is not stone plaster, an actual marble and everything. I wanted to try and work on covering up the plaster around the entryway here, but using all this stone and trying to just kind of wrap it around smoothly, I think we're just too many pieces for the space, and I want to try and keep the block count at least somewhat low to save on processing and lag and stuff. So I ended up just having to square it off. I'm not quite 100% happy with that solution, but I think it is the solution we had to pretty much go with. And then obviously we're just going to copy and paste it onto the back side. I wanted to actually paste it onto the inside as well. So this is another limitation of the copy and paste, is that because on the grid they are aligned to a certain side of the structure, or at least wall thickness, if I try and put them on the other side, they don't align to the wall anymore, because there's a width of the wall difference that it needs to be. And so you end up having to actually do an outside, copy that to the other side on the outside, do an interior, copy that to the other side on the interior. But then if you have an asymmetrical building like this, when you copy the outside to the other side, because of that off-center door, parts of it end up being on the wrong side now, because now I had to make a spot for a door, which means everything has to shift over to the left or the right. And I end up running into that here after this side is done. And by the way, just covering up the plaster with the back side of some of the pirate stuff. And that looks good because, it washes it out. It washes that kind of yellowy brown away, but also it smooths it. The problem with that is that object is very low on the priority in terms of line of sight. And so when you pull away, it actually disappears. So here you can see what I did to copy this section was I was going to copy each element specifically, decided that was too slow, did a drag box of just the whole wall section, copied it outside, and then cleaned it up to what I needed, and then tried to stick it on this side of the wall. Here, of course, is where I found out it was an asymmetrical structure, so that couldn't work at all. And I had to actually go back and forth very quickly and find out how I built each side again and rebuild it from scratch and do the same thing on the interior. So I essentially had to rebuild 4 walls when I should have just only had to do 2 walls and use copy and paste, which was a little annoying, but you do what you have to do to make things look nice. I really like using arches as inlaid into part of the wall here. More window elements just for another kind of horizontal line with a kind of a color shift with the dark blue and black from the metal kind of grating on the windows there. And I think that's going to do us for the speed build section. So I'm going to go ahead and cut to when everything is done. And I hope you guys enjoy that. Alright, so that is going to do us for today's episode of Planet Coaster. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll go ahead and give you guys a good proper look around of what all we did today. So over here we have some stuff that you didn't see on camera. This is just a bunch of shrubbery kind of garden areas. I don't know what this structure is called. This type of domed kind of roof with pillars. I know like gazebos kind of pop into my mind, but it's not a gazebo. It's definitely something else. I just don't sadly know the proper term for this one. I threw in a statue in here because I feel like there should be a statue of some kind, and sadly pirate theme is the only statue that we have right now, so that is why there is a pirate instead of say like Aphrodite or something like that. Doing a dome like this, by the way, was really challenging for me. It was kind of my first dome, and really I'd want to go through and touch this up because you can see how rough all these edges can be, and it doesn't really align, probably to my standards. But it was a good test. You know, I just needed another little structure on the ground somewhere, I feel. And then also down here we have, you know, a little planter for some nice shrubbery and things. You know, a little bit of a garden area. I could add some benches and stuff if I needed. We kind of stop here because I don't quite know what to do with Mount Olympus just yet. Back here, this is the entryway into the ride. Really wish I could get rid of these yellow ticket booths. I'm fine with the person standing here with these concrete like trash cans to collect tickets and stuff, but you know, I'd really like it if that stuff wasn't there. As you come in, you know, you have to go up the queue line, which goes up the right side of the structure. Of course, the whole time you have a nice view of the lower garden area over there. And I'd really like it if I also had a way to come out here, because the view from, you know, the front of the temple is really nice, just overlooking the path, the stairway that people get up and down, you know, the other villas and all that stuff. It's just a really nice view up there. This is going to be where the roller coaster comes back into the station, though. Here, if we hop inside, you can see all the interior detail, using some doors as some red, almost like paint in a sense, as the interior temple would be a little bit more fancy than, say, the rest of it. Here's our coaster. I haven't colored it or anything, so I doubt this is going to be the final coloration of the thing, but it looks like it's going to end up holding 18 or so passengers. And here is the exit. You can view down onto the other garden down here, which probably needs a bench or something. I would like to show you how I did that mermaid statue, because I think I improved it just on the base of it. So the mermaid, I never really like the mermaid statue a whole lot, because the default base of it I think is kind of weak, and then also just the general kind of proportions of the mermaid itself. Like, I mean, the head is huge, neck is too small. I kind of wish they had a kind of a higher quality. I think the pirate turned out really well, but the mermaid I think is a little weak. Threw it on top of this element here, and then just kind of set it so the leg, or I guess flipper in this case, actually wraps around. It bulks up the fountain quite nicely, I think. So I think it ended up working in the long run. Couldn't have a Roman district without some type of statue for sure. Just more gardens back through here, and some side pathing for people to walk on and stuff. So I think that's gonna do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you all enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe if you're new. Go ahead, check out my other videos as well, as you get to see how all of this is built. And I'm just happy with all this progress. Zooming out is probably one of my favorite things to do. Seeing all the buildings that we've accomplished, and then also I can't wait till Mount Olympus is done and all detailed out, plus the library, and then that coaster ride and everything. So it'll be great. Anyways, until next time, I'll see you guys in some more Planet Coaster.